First of all, let me say, we clarify this because apparently it's been said that I declined into alcoholism immediately after that and I lost interest in football. I mean, the following year I was a league top scorer and we won the FA Cup at Wembley.
When Jimmy Greaves passed away in 2021, England lost its greatest ever goalscorer, but his story is haunted by the men he felt betrayed by. Some, he might say, he never respected. By the numbers, he was a phenomenon. He remains the highest goalscorer in the history of English top-flight football with 357 goals. For his country, he scored 44 goals in just 57 England games. His record of 6 international hat-tricks has yet to be surpassed by any England player. Yet, his legacy isn't defined by these goals. It's defined by the one great triumph he was excluded from. The 1966 World Cup final was the zenith of English football and the nadir of his professional life. This 1966 conflict wasn't his only battle. His entire career was a clash between his relaxed, natural genius and the rigid, strict managers who controlled him. The video's title asks for his toughest opponents. They weren't defenders. They were 4 powerful figures who shaped his destiny. Let's start at the beginning. Greaves exploded onto the scene at Chelsea. Born in Manor Park, Essex, his talent was evident from his youth, where he scored over 170 goals in 2 seasons for the Chelsea youth side. He made his Football League debut in August 1957 at just 17 years old. He scored Chelsea's only goal in a draw against Tottenham. This was the beginning of something special. He would score 132 goals in 169 total appearances for the club. His style was characterised as natural and instinctive, a stark contrast to the methodical, often laborious play of the era. He possessed a unique ability to find the net from any angle, often appearing to simply pass the ball into the goal with a calm that belied the pressure of the moment. In November 1959, he became the youngest player in English history to score 100 league goals. He was just 20 years and 290 days old. His 1960-61 season remains the benchmark for Chelsea strikers. He scored 41 top-flight goals, a club record that has never been broken. Greaves was a natural, an artist, but the systems in football wanted a soldier. It's a clash we still see today. Before we get into his first great battle, who do you think is the most natural player in football right now? Let us know in the comments. And if you love stories about football's biggest icons, make sure to subscribe. Despite his personal success at Chelsea, the team failed to challenge for major honours. With the club in need of funds, the decision was made to sell their prized asset. His departure for AC Milan in 1961 for a fee of 80,000 halals was driven by the financial realities of both the club and the player, who sought to escape the restrictive maximum wage that still shackled English football. His first major conflict came in 1961. Greaves's brief spell at AC Milan served as a dress rehearsal for the defining conflict of his professional life. The move to Italy was cursed from the start. He'd been signed by manager Giuseppe Viani, a man he described as a lovely fella. But before Greaves could even arrive in Italy, Viani suffered a heart attack and was replaced by Nereo Rocco. This twist of fate placed Greaves under a manager whose footballing ideology was the complete opposite of his own. Rocco was known as El Paron, the master. He was a towering figure in Italian football, celebrated for introducing the highly defensive Catenaccio system. This was the door-bolt system, a tactical approach that prioritised defensive organisation and collective discipline over individual expression. He was a tactician who prioritised structure and control above all else. For the free-spirited Greaves, Rocco's methods were a profound culture shock. He described the manager as a tyrant. There was a prevailing sentiment that Rocco was anti-English, and Greaves added, "I don't know about that, but he was certainly anti-me." The environment at Milan was one of intense discipline. Greaves referred to it as a boot camp mentality. Players were required to spend half the week locked away in hotels or training compounds, a practice alien to the more relaxed English football culture of the time. This controlling approach was designed to forge a unit, but for an individualist like Greaves, it felt like a prison. The friction between the two men reached its peak in one memorable incident. Rocco, seeking to enforce his strict curfew, locked Greaves into his hotel room. Unwilling to be contained, Greaves escaped out of a window, across a ledge, through a hallway window, and out to freedom via the main reception. This wasn't just youthful rebellion. It was a symbolic rejection of Rocco's absolute authority and a physical manifestation of the clash between the manager's demand for control and the player's yearning for personal freedom. Despite the profound personal misery and his homesickness, Greaves's on-field prowess remained undiminished. He scored 9 goals in just 10 league appearances. This crucial fact proves his failure in Italy was a matter of personality and philosophy, not a decline in his footballing ability. The decision to part ways after only a few months was mutual. Rocco was eager to remove a player who was both unhappy and insubordinate, quickly selling him to Tottenham to fund the purchase of a more system-compliant Brazilian midfielder, Dino Sani. The Italian crucible had been short but deeply formative. It was his first encounter with a manager who demanded the individual submit entirely to the system. This experience made him less willing to adapt to similar demands 5 years later, almost inevitable. After escaping Italy, Greaves returned to London in December 1961. Tottenham Hotspur manager Bill Nicholson signed him for £99.99, a figure deliberately set to spare him the pressure of being English football's first $100,000 player. At White Hart Lane, he found his spiritual home. He scored a hat-trick on his debut against Blackpool. Over 9 years, he became the club's all-time record goalscorer with 266 goals in 379 appearances. At Tottenham, his individual brilliance was paired with collective success. He was a pivotal figure in a team that won 2 FA Cups in 1962 and 1967, and the 1963 European Cup Winners' Cup. In the FA Cup final of 1962, he scored the opening goal in a 3-1 victory over Burnley. The following year, he scored twice in the European final as Spurs defeated Atletico Madrid 5-1, becoming the first British club to win a major European trophy. His status among his peers was undisputed. Teammate Cliff Jones described him simply as the greatest goalscorer there ever was and ever will be. Goalkeeper Pat Jennings called him a genius, praising his composure. Jim just passed the ball into the net, never lashed it. Manager Bill Nicholson recalled the moment he knew he had to sign him. "I wanted to sign him from the moment I saw him score his first goal in league football on his Chelsea debut at White Hart Lane. It had all the hallmarks of his game, improvisation and genius. But his greatest challenge was yet to come. The relationship between England manager Sir Alf Ramsey and Jimmy Greaves was one of professional necessity rather than natural affinity. Ramsey was a quiet revolutionary. He had wrested sole control over team selection from the traditional Football Association committee, a power he intended to use decisively. He was a fastidious planner and a strict disciplinarian whose entire managerial philosophy was built around the supremacy of the team system. His tactical innovation, a narrow 4-4-2 formation that abandoned traditional wingers, led to his team being dubbed the Wingless Wonders. Ramsey's core belief was explicit and unwavering. He did not necessarily select the best individual players, but rather the best players for his system. Greaves was the antithesis of this philosophy. He was pure, improvisational talent. One observer described him as art without permission, a perfect description of his role as a philosophical outlier within Ramsey's rigidly structured machine. While Ramsey was building a disciplined, functional unit, Greaves remained its most brilliant, yet least controllable, component. Greaves began the 1966 World Cup as England's undisputed first-choice striker. He played in all 3 group stage matches. However, in the final group game against France, his tournament was irrevocably changed by a single moment. A robust challenge from French midfielder Joseph Bonnell left Greaves with a deep gash on his shin that required 14 stitches to close. The injury was severe. Greaves later recalled the moment in the dressing room. "I looked down and we were wearing white socks and the boot was full of blood. I knew I wasn't going to be fit really after that." This moment of physical pain opened the door for his replacement and set in motion the chain of events that would lead to his ultimate heartbreak. Ramsey turned to West Ham United's Geoff Hurst, a strong and versatile forward. Until that point, Hurst had been on the bench. He was thrust into the notoriously brutal quarter-final against Argentina, a match of extreme physicality. He seized his opportunity, scoring the game's only goal with a well-taken header. In the semi-final against Portugal, Hurst again played a crucial role, providing an assist in the 2-1 victory that secured secured England's place in the final. Hurst wasn't just scoring, he was performing the exact role Ramsey's system required. He held the ball, created space, and provided a physical presence that complemented the team's industrious midfield. By the time of the final against West Germany, Greaves had recovered from his injury and was declared fit to play. The nation expected its greatest goalscorer to be reinstated for the biggest match in its history. Ramsey, however, made the monumental and ruthless decision to stick with Hurst. This wasn't merely a case of never change a winning team, it was a deliberate assertion of his managerial philosophy. Hurst's performances had provided Ramsey with the perfect justification to select a player who was arguably a better fit for his system. Hurst was disciplined and followed instructions. Greaves was individualistic flair, a quality that Ramsey viewed as a luxury he could not afford in a World Cup final. By dropping England's most famous striker, Ramsey sent an unequivocal message. His tactical vision was absolute. The system was superior to the individual, no matter how brilliant that individual might be. From Greaves's perspective, this was the ultimate professional betrayal, a decision that led to years of deep private hurt. The immediate emotional fallout for Greaves was devastating. As England celebrated their historic 4-2 victory, fueled by a legendary hat-trick from Geoff Hurst, Greaves felt a profound sense of isolation. He later described the experience with poignant clarity. The overwhelming feeling was being probably the loneliest man in Wembley Stadium that particular day. While his teammates were swept up in a wave of national euphoria, Greaves felt his personal dream had vanished. Unable to partake in the celebrations, he quietly slipped away from the team's hotel that night and went home alone, a moment that crystallised his separation from the triumph. Geoff Hurst, the man who replaced him, later acknowledged the depth of Greaves's pain, stating simply, "You couldn't blame him for his withdrawal." In the wake of the final, Greaves felt a profound sense of emotional abandonment. This was what has been described as a silent legacy, a feeling that his personal anguish was overlooked by teammates absorbed in the glory of their collective achievement. He reportedly never truly forgave the indifference he perceived from some within the squad, including prominent figures like Bobby Charlton, Martin Peters, and Roger Hunt, holding reunions for decades to come. Greaves remained an outsider to that specific experience. He had admitted, "He couldn't force myself to join the festivities on the night of the final," a psychological separation that became permanent. Geoff Hurst later stated that he and Greaves never discussed what happened regarding the events of 1966. The silence was likely not a product of malice, but a natural consequence of profoundly divergent experiences. The victors were immersed in a national euphoria, a state of mind fundamentally incapable of fully processing the unique and solitary grief of the man they had replaced. Greaves's exclusion was physically manifested by the institutional policy of the time. In 1966, FIFA rules stipulated that only the 11 players on the pitch at the final whistle were awarded a winner's medal. This meant that Greaves, along with the rest of the non-playing squad members and even manager Sir Alf Ramsey, received no tangible recognition of their part in the victory. For over 40 years, this policy stood as a concrete symbol of his status as an outsider to England's greatest moment. It wasn't until 2007, following a long campaign led by former UK Sports Minister Richard Cabourn, that FIFA agreed to retroactively award medals to all non-playing members of World Cup winning squads from 1930 to 1974. On June 10, 2009, in a ceremony at Downing Street, Greaves finally received his winner's medal. The moment provided a sense of long overdue, albeit bittersweet, closure. Greaves himself noted the poignancy of the occasion, remarking, "Sir Alf would have been proud because he would also have got a medal. Had he lived, we might have got them a bit sooner." The most challenging period of Greaves's life began in the 1970s. After a final stint at West Ham, he retired from top-flight football in 1971 at the age of just 31. Without the daily structure and purpose of the game, he descended into a severe battle with alcoholism. In his autobiography, Greavesy, he was careful to state that his addiction was not a direct, simplistic result of the 1966 disappointment. However, the narrative of his life inextricably links the two events. His book frames the bitter disappointment of 1966 as one of the key darker aspects of his life that preceded his addiction. The unresolved professional trauma, combined with the loss of his footballing identity, created a profound void. Alcoholism became the destructive force that filled it. But here's where the story transforms. Greaves did not let this destroy him. After battling the demons of alcoholism that followed his premature retirement, Greaves forged an extraordinary second act. His emergence as a television personality was a revelation. He became the co-host of the iconic Saturday morning show, Saint and Greavesy. This new career allowed him to showcase the natural wit, everyman charm, and disarming humour that had often been suppressed within the rigid confines of professional football. He connected with the public on a human level, discussing the game with an accessibility and warmth that was a world away from the guarded and tactical analysis that was becoming prevalent. This career rebirth propelled him back into the nation's affections. He arguably became more beloved as a personality than he ever was as a player. It cemented his status not as a member of the 66 establishment, but as the people's champion, a flawed, brilliant, and deeply human figure whose story of struggle and recovery resonated far more profoundly than any winner's medal could. He was the genius who had been cast aside, the hero who had fallen, and the man who had found the strength to get back up, all with a twinkle in his eye. Ultimately, Jimmy Greaves leaves a twofold legacy. He is, by the immutable logic of the numbers, one of the greatest and most lethal goal scorers in the history of football. His records stand as a testament to a talent so pure it seemed elemental, but his more enduring legacy is that of a cultural icon. His journey serves as a timeless and poignant commentary on the complex, often cruel, relationship between individual brilliance and the demands of the collective. He was the uncrowned king, but in his humanity he won a place in the public's heart that no single victory could ever secure.